Fortunate to be here in the Diocese of Moines. I've enjoyed the community immensely, and I was just up in Minnesota today for a funeral, and they keep asking me, how do you like Iowa? And I said, well, it's like heaven, as described, and I encourage them to come south and really appreciate, the value of life and how important it is. But I have to tell you, during the first few months that I was here, I was out at Mount Ayr, the parish of St. Joseph, went around trying to visit all the 81 parishes within a year that I was here. It was in the fall, it was at that particular parish, and it was coming dusk, and I was heading on Highway 6 all the way out to Council Bluffs for that night. And as I was leaving, they were imploring me. They said, be very careful because the deer are out by, the dozens and dozens. As a matter of fact, a short distance, about 20 miles down the road, about 20 or 30 deer had been hit just in the last week that they were talking about. So they said, we don't want to lose you already, and so be careful as you go down the road. So of course, that gave me a white knuckles, that I was sitting there looking for these deer all over the place, and nothing. There was nothing there. And so finally, though, I approached this one town down the road about 20 miles, and I looked off my peripheral vision. What did I see but a big, huge deer just coming over the road boundary there, the stationary kind of ramp there. And so I was able to slow down and come to a complete halt, and that deer had come over the barrier. And this actually happened. I was able to stop right, he was right in front of me, and he went down on both knees, both front. And he stayed there reverentially for about 10 seconds. And I said, this deer has to be kept. Because he knew who was driving the car, he was very reverential, he gave me a welcome, and then he leapt up and went over the barrier on the other side and off into the woods. And I was able to slow down appropriately so that there was a car behind me who witnessed all this, but I didn't get an affidavit, that's what And some people are a little skeptical, but it really happened, and that was kind of a sense of a welcome I really feel here in the state of Iowa. So we come tonight to evangelization in a relatively simple definition, which I'd encourage you at least to think about because I think it's universally applicable, is that evangelization is making Jesus Christ known and loved in our times by choosing to live out the gospel at all times. And so what we're saying is that somehow we have been converted to the reality of Jesus Christ in our lives, and to be witnesses all the time is just to be ourselves, but to live out the gospel at every moment because of our very strong and obvious convictions that this has happened within us. Presupposes, I think, first of all, something that perhaps our Protestant friends have had for a long time, but I think it's very important. It depends, therefore, on a personal relationship with Jesus, which is built on the foundation of the Gospels. And it witnesses simply through whom I am every day. In other words, we have taken the Gospels, we have so deeply planted it within ourselves that we become identified with it. Sometimes we might say interchangeable with the Gospel, and then we live that life, and hopefully that witness will make Jesus Christ come alive in our time. Up in Minnesota, before I left, we had the Evangelization movement, we called it, an Evangelization Initiative. And at that time, we went around to all the parishes, and they became involved, and they had faith-sharing discussion groups during the season of Lent. And I went around to a number of those that after they had them, and they came back after Easter, they were having a reflection on how it all helped them or what they experienced. And an old man, I remember, one of the parishes got up, and in kind of a voice that cracked a little bit, he said, well, he said, I thought when I was getting into this evangelization initiative that I was going to go out, and convert everybody and be the hero and have all sorts of people coming after me and leading into the church. He said, what I've discovered, he says, is that I needed to be evangelized more than anybody. And so I think it's a very strong insight into the reality of evangelization. Because even if you go back to the apostolic times, as we did with Stephen this evening, that he was evangelized first, recognize that as an ongoing call for himself, and then because of that, he was able to reach out and to bring that good news to others. Here in this Diocese of Des Moines, about a year ago, I went around to each of our schools, took the high schools for a whole Saturday, and then from about 6 to 9 or so, visited all of the other 15 grade schools with their faculties, with their boards of education, with their pastors, all the pastors came, etc., and also some of the parents. And what we came to the realization is that the evaluation of Catholic education is not just a matter of information. And we don't have Catholic schools simply because we teach courses that kids attend, or as we said in the olden days, teach catechism. That is not basically what a Catholic school is. But rather, we see that it is intended somehow to introduce people to the Spirit of the Lord Jesus and enable them over time to become identified with Him in such a way that they really become authentic believers who carry this message forward. So they are immersed in a community in which they, yes, learn things, information, we say in the communication, but also to become very much a part of a community that lives in the Spirit of Jesus and makes it authentic in terms of their weakness. Now, I think our Catholic schools in the past, you know, that we all had brothers or sisters or priests who populated the faculties of our Catholic schools. And what they did before they got their teaching degrees is, first of all, they were very highly motivated to join a community, to give of their lives in service to others based on their commitment, again, in faith to Jesus, to Christ, and that love experience that they had with Him. And then they went through 2 or 3 years of formation. And so that it was not academic formation, but it was a formation to really enable their hearts to come together to represent a very special charism which they may have found in their order or their community. And so we find, of course, all of the Jesuits who did so much for education, but their mission was not only to teach a specific subject, but to do so within the context of a community of believers and disciples and followers of Christ. And so we went to all these schools, and today we've handed out the responsibility for our schools to our to lay teachers. And wonderful, they're wonderful people, but they have not had the benefit of that formative experience that gave them a certain ability, just by their nature, to bring about Catholic identity and a Catholic character to our schools. They're really gifted. You know, the nuns work for nothing. The priests basically, you know, cause equivalently to nothing. All of that sort of thing, because they're highly motivated because of their belief and their commitment in that way. And so we talked about it with the teachers. A lot of them were individually very gifted, but and had good spirit and faith. But it was almost individual as opposed to a community of a school. And so that they were called in our Catholic schools today, I believe, to witness to their faith. Not only, you know, so that when they go to the Eucharist, the Mass, they believe in it, they participate in it, and obviously the kids get something out of it if they do. If they go up there and sit in the corner and look at the ceiling, the teachers, well, the kids absorb that also. They see what it is. But what was interesting was that in each of the schools, that they came to realization that they can't give what they don't have. And so they all came to a resolution that we really need to have some supplemental help. One, to develop strongly our own individual and personal faith, and secondly, to have a community faith in which we respect and understand each other and are able then to develop a spirit within the school itself under the leadership of the pastor. The principal is also very important in this, and that they really are not hesitant to express their faith and to share it with the kids, because the kids are like sponges absorbing what they hear and do in these schools, and they complement, hopefully, what they experience in their families. And so that all together, that has a tremendously beneficial effect on our kids, we hope. So that's the goal. And to respond to that we have now a school of faith that is being introduced in the diocese. It had a year of probation, charter year out at St. Albert's and Council Bluffs. They went through it. What it is that the teachers get together once a month for 3 hours. And what they do is they have some input, some information that they share. And then they have an opportunity for an hour or so just of private prayer, to think and pray together, to let this touch their hearts, to be moved by it. And then they have faith sharing. And at least the pilot project out in Council Bluffs went enormously well. That the people, the teachers liked it, they understood it, and I think when you share your faith with one another, that people realize, I didn't know you thought that, I didn't know you had those sorts of understanding and faith and all that sort of thing, because our tendency is to communicate sometimes quite superficially, and not to get to the heart of things that really count. So we're looking forward to this, and want to thank you for your support of our campaign, our capital campaign, because it's from the resources of that we're able to provide for our teachers, our parishes, our types of staff, our schools, our expanding things. But this hopefully will be something that will help them develop. What I'm trying to say by all this is simply that we all are kind of in the same situation. That the teachers, they're very dedicated, they want to work in the Catholic school, they give up a little bit of a supplemental income that they might get in the public school, they come with a lot of motivation and conviction, but they also need the opportunity to be formed, to be able to have, grow in their faith, and grow in their faith independently. So I say that's an example, and then that comes down to all of you. That what I think is so very important about evangelization is to engage in a personal relationship through prayer with Christ, with the Lord Jesus. And you need to constantly enter into prayer, association, interaction, and with the inspiration that ultimately that will be beneficial as you reach out to others. Because it'll be on your heart, it'll be who you are. People will sense that immediately. It won't be artificial. And that they will really come to respect and understand it in a very positive way. Oftentimes at funerals, I'll ask a family, now, if they see they love their father, and they said, what did your father say about religion, about faith? Oh, he didn't say anything. It was for him a very private matter. And so he kept it really close to his chest, And so he was very good. He took us to Mass every Sunday. He paid for our Catholic education. He did all of these sorts of things to support the faith, but never really witnessed the faith to us, what it meant to him and how it touched his heart. So all I'm saying is that it's not necessarily within the Catholic mode. We're not kind of used to that. We kind of associate it with evangelical types or all of that. But as we read in the New Testament, the Gospels, that this is really what we're called to do, and hopefully we can find some comfort in it. You don't have to get up in the soapbox, I'm not saying anything like that, but just to share from the bottom of our hearts oftentimes what our faith is, how it relates to God, what its meaning and purpose is for us, how it's impacted us, and sometimes in the past, the words didn't come easily or they didn't come. But that's part of evangelization, is to be able to plant it in our own hearts so that it is able to be shared with others. And so I would say that given that, then given the fact that we are called to do it every day in our own lives, it happens where we're at. First and foremost, it happens in our marriages. That, marriage has been described as living like the life of the Trinity. That the powerful love of God initiates within us the great gifts of His love. And what is the life of the Trinity? It's the interaction of love and care for one another. That's the Father, Son, and Spirit, and they're each three persons, the one Godhead, and they care powerfully for one another. And the beauty of marriage, sacramental marriage, and what we call the new times among all of us, is a very special participation in that life. And somehow, if we can develop that through our prayer, through our conversation with our wives, through all of those sorts of things, we have the time to really deeply engage in that reality, that too is evangelization, because the fruit of that love will be seen by others. And that it is so necessary to be able to do that. I realize it's very idealistic. It confronts all the practical realities that oftentimes we have to deal with in life. But if we could kind of reach out to the dignity of the human person that has been given to each of us, that it is possible. It is possible to do it. We just need to, as I say, take the time, reflection, be with our wives, and to talk about that love that you have foremost and first and foremost for her, and to see that it is modeled in a very beautiful way in the love of the Trinity. At least the invitation is there to model it and to grow. But again, it takes some time working together, maybe some retreats, some discussions, some resources that will really help us to grow in that way. And I think that we really have to do that because of all of the institutions in the world today that are under the greatest challenge. It's marriage. And marriage is the rock foundation of who we are, of our culture, of our civilization, of all that we are, of what we are about. And so if we can strive in our time, in our day, to develop that, and to be a witness to others, then others will see Christ through us, the life of the Trinity through us, and be encouraged along the way. So it's not as though we have to get on the street corner or wave a lot of papers and shout, but just that commitment to our marriage is really going to be very fruitful in terms of evangelization. And today, as I say, that challenge, people living together without the benefit of marriage, the secular, trendy weddings, they try to outdo each other, and we know they're superficial. And once it's over, all it is that's left is a big bill, and you have to kind of fix up to that, which maybe takes a year or two to pay off. And unfortunately, we also have easy divorces. That is just kind of, when things don't go well, you decide you get bored or whatever might be the case, it's very easy to write it off. And I was kind of astounded. I was talking to a seminary candidate, really a good fellow, who's going to the seminary next year, and he kind of just casually, when I was talking to him about his family, he kind of casually said, well, my parents are still together. Just that mentality, that he would, and I think he was kind of serious that they're still together, and that it's so fluid in our society today that it's going to take a marvel of witness that's going to make a tremendous difference. So I would say that one of the first priorities here in our diocese is trying to address the issue of marriage stabilization, how important it really is, that for the happiness and good of the couple, first and foremost, that's what we try to witness to and give our attention to, is that we're really wanting for the benefit of the couples themselves, that they're entitled to that happiness, and hopefully that it might come about. So there's a couple things we're doing. One is we're going to have, beginning in September this year, a year of marriage and family life, and put a lot of resources and activity in that, and try to do something very significant. Just to highlight it, to provide the resources, to encourage you, to see how important it is to put our apples in a basket for that year. So we welcome, like the Knights of Columbus, welcome all of you, anybody who would like to participate, to help us, to work with it, to make that a very important, significant moment here in the Church of Des Moines. And we're in sync with Pope Francis, as the whole world seems to be in sync with Pope Francis, seemingly to like him and appreciate him very much. But the synod that he's going to have, the extraordinary synod next year, is on evangelization and the gospel and marriage. So again, he's going in that direction. The synod the year after that, the whole world, is also going to be on marriage and family life. So it's really extraordinarily important. I feel extraordinarily blessed to have had a wonderful family life, and you just would wish that great gift on so many others. And that is, I think, people, that are millionaires, heads of companies, and all that sort of thing. You talk to them, what is the most satisfying experience for you? They say, with my family. Be with my family, to have that love and that care, and to be with them. And so we can generate that, because it's not so much the case today. And then there's the World Day of Marriage, which is scheduled for Philadelphia a year from this September. Hopefully the Pope will come to that. He hasn't given his word that he is yet. But again, that is the Church's really effort to lift up and highlight marriage itself. The second place where you can do a lot of good in terms of evangelization is with your children. That the value, I think there's a twofold level of relationship, probably more than that. First of all, you have to have values, you have to have discipline, and you have to have clear teaching and witness. No doubt about it. You can't kind of go back and forth and oscillate all the time between those sorts of things. So that's one dimension that I think that is extraordinarily important for the male and the family to render. That's kind of comes from their nature, that our kids look for it. They look for the direction that the fathers can bring to them, and they need them. They really need those guidelines and direction and discipline in a good sense. That is, by the expression of our convictions. But also, they need the bonding, the love and support to complement, you don't want to be harsh in terms of the discipline, but you want to create expectations so that they can grow that in themselves. And when that doesn't happen, it's really terrifically difficult. There's not discipline in a person's life that, you really set them out of faith and they don't have any difficulty. But the bonding is extraordinarily important, and I think it's becoming well known among our young people. And a father who is a little older, had his children a little later in life, said his youngest son, who's 10, I think he's in his 60s now, came up to him and said, "Dad, we need to do a little bonding these days, huh? We need to get together and do a little bonding." Well, I don't think that ever occurred to me when I was talking to my dad, maybe 2 years, but anyway, it's kind of seeped into our culture and made kind of a difference, but it's true. And I remember, as I told a story, that on Saturday morning I heard the doorbell, and was rather reluctant to go and answer it because it's kind of free time, had 3 or 4 hours, I didn't know what to do with it. So I thought, Pope Francis, he wants us to reach out to the peripheries, so kind of had a built on my conscience. So I went and answered the door, and here was a 25-year-old individual in a cold day, rainy and very harsh. He just had a t-shirt on, he was all wet, and he came in and introduced himself. "I'm Anthony," and he wanted to go to confession, although he'd never been to confession before. So we had a nice conversation. I was just getting breakfast, so he had a little breakfast with me. But at the heart of the question, he just broke down and sobbed in tears. He said, "My dad has never accepted me, and he doesn't accept me to this day. And so he has had a lot of problems, and it just isn't, you can't blame everything on other people, but just to say the importance of the father in bonding with the child and showing that love is extraordinarily important." And he had just a flood of tears about all of his own sins and failures, but in a sense he has 2 little children, and he's perpetuating what his dad did to them. He says, "I love them, I care for them," pictures, and he shares all that. But he said, "I promised things to my son that I never fulfilled." And perhaps that's in some ways worse than not having any father at all. But it's important for evangelization, I think, to realize you have to establish guidelines. You also have to show that you got some love and your care for those children. It's extraordinarily important in this day because so many are deficient of that and does not have the opportunity to do it. I would say that's your home life, and then evangelization in terms of your public life, that you have your work environment, and I think it's to be conscious of the environment in which you live. What do you contribute to that environment? Is it upbeat, positive, encouraging? Do you kind of support your fellow workers? Or you want to kind of encourage us on just wages? That is the whole theme of Pope Francis so often today. He said that, we cannot be only under the reign of capitalism, sovereignty of capitalism, in the sense that we do not consider human need. And human people need work, they need sufficient wages to keep their family, so we have to work all of that together in a way that really takes into care. If you've ever had some people, like we have in the parishes oftentimes, who are unemployed, it's devastating, and it's horrible for their families. And there are so many people who are underpaid, and so we have to develop a system through evangelization that really respects the dignity of every human person and really contributes to the ability to have an authentic family life. Because we know so many divorces, tensions of family are over finances, because there's just so little to go around, and it creates havoc in the families today. So as people who believe in the gospel, the dignity of every human person, that, in our public life, how do we do what we can to be advocates for all people, so at least they have a decent life and a significantly positive life. Then in politics, of course, we all know, I think that we all know that one or the other party holds up one position that can identify with the church. Then they also have one or two that we can identify, each of the parties. And my saying is, well, do we abandon it? I say, no, go to the party that you want, but change that party. And speak up and talk about the values that are so important. Again, we've been robbed of our identity because of the fact that we capitulate oftentimes to a party that does not hold all of the values and truth that really are so important to us. And so I think whatever we can do to do that. And in our public life, Pope Francis calls us to mercy, understanding, and tenderness among the poor, among the abandoned, the elderly, those who are in the peripheries of society, the margins of society, those who are prisoners, those who are unfortunately afflicted with drugs and alcohol. All of those people are on the outside of society, and he tells us that if we're loyal to the gospel, that somehow we also have to be able to reach out to them, be attentive to them, to recognize that we are the agents of Jesus to them, as he instructed us through the Gospels, through this mercy, understanding, and tenderness. And we're tempted to be judgmental. We're tempted to say that, that they've kind of made their own bed, and now they have to sleep in it and all that sort of thing. But Pope Francis kind of sets that all aside and says, no, that we are called really to be Jesus to them, and is that the attitude that he would have. So sometimes as we work in all this, we have strong convictions. We want to live by those convictions. Again, as I said at Mass, that we might be a little schizophrenic, but we have to see the totality of the gospel of a strength of convictions and values, but blended with the mercy and tenderness and compassion that Jesus wants us to exercise that with in terms of our relationship with one another. As we come back to the definition of evangelization, making Jesus Christ known and loved in our time by choosing to live out the gospel at every moment. And so I've just kind of gone through ways that we can do so in our personal, family, married life. I think we can do so also in some range of our public life because of whom we are and the witness that we want to render. But at the heart of it all is our own desire, as I say, to enter into that personal relationship with one another, with Jesus, God the Father, through prayer, through our retreats, through our gospel reading. And that's why groups like this are so extraordinarily important, and why I compliment all of the leadership who have established it and gone forward, because then we can share those convictions. Hopefully we get beyond the point of never saying anything about it, but we can have the courage to share it with one another. That strengthens us, and that gives us the ability to really be evangelizers in our own experience, in our own the only environment in which we live, our home and our work and all that sort of thing. So being a part of this, evangelization is the work of the church. That means it's the work of each one of us. It's not something remote and difficult. It's just where we live and how we do it. And I don't have to convince you that it's needed more than ever. And so that what Jesus has entrusted to us is what we hope you will do, and what a world of difference you will make for the sake of people's happiness and for the sake of their own growth in the ways of God. So thank you, and keep up the good work, all you leaders and all you people. Appreciate it.